I have this cut out, and I will open up my dart. Then the dart I opened on the neckline, I will close it back and cut out the neckline area. Okay, then I will open up the dart. You can see what I have now. So I've added my seam allowance on the shoulder line as well. I will cut it out. So you can see the shape of the pattern has started coming out little by little. So the broken point I have left on this pattern is the waist area, which is very important because of the amount of that I picked on the waistline is much. So that's about 3 inches. So that is why I have this much of break points on the waistline. You can see the first point here, another point here, and another point here, another point there. Whereas I have this on a perfect straight line when I was constructing the dart. So I will need to return this back to straight line. So in this case, you have to be very careful and be calm enough. So with the help of the straight lines I have on my ruler, I will make sure the straight line align properly with the edges of my pattern, which is the center front. Then I will move it backwards to this point. So this is the part I have business with. So I'm returning this back on a straight line. Okay, so the center of the dart I cut out earlier, I will extend it downwards to the point. Then I have this. So on the waistline, I will add my seam allowance of 1/2 inch. So I have my seam allowance added on the waist area. Then I have the side left, so I add my seam allowance. On the side, I will add 1 inch as my seam allowance. So now I have my seam allowance added by the side of my pattern, which is the side seam. Then I will proceed in cutting out this part. I will cut on the waistline. Then I will cut out the side. So now I have this. Now I have my front pattern as a single piece. You can see what I have. But don't forget, we are arriving at an 8 pieces dress. This has to be in pieces just like the back panel. So in doing this, the darts I folded on both sides will be cut out. So I will just cut out the dart. And don't forget, we have a new dart point, not the apex anymore. So I'm not cutting to the apex. I'm stopping on the 1 inch I measured forward from the apex points. So that is, I'm cutting out the new dart line. Okay, then I have this. Can you see what I have? Now I will be opening up the dart line I have here. But before opening it up, I will have to reconstruct the dart as well. Because when I was plotting the dart, I plotted and stopped on the apex. But the dart has to be moved away from the apex. So from the apex, I will measure 1 inch downward on the midline of the dart. And you can as well make use of a curve ruler in constructing the upper dart. So the positioning is like this. The curvy part of the ruler is facing towards the side. You can see the positioning. The curvy side is facing towards the armhole side. On this side, then on the other side, I flip the ruler and the curvy side is facing towards the center front now. This is the upper part of my bodice, while this is the lower part of my bodice. Then on the armhole side, from the armhole dart point to the 1 inch I measured forward, I will connect like so with a slight curve, not much curve, just a slight curve. So now this is the upper part of my pattern. This is the center front and this is the side. So this is the dart I just reconstructed. Now I will continue cutting from the armhole point, following the curve I just constructed. Then I will cut this out completely. So I have this as one part of my pattern. So now I will need to flip my pattern over now in an opposite direction. This is the center front now, this is the upper part, and this is the lower part. So this will help me to be able to cut my darts properly. So now I have two pieces for the front panel. Just like what we have on our reference image, there is a joining on the armhole which makes the pattern looks like a princess dart. You can see the curve, then it will go downward like so. Then if you look at the image closely, you will notice there is a dart on the neckline area downward to the apex area as well. So this is where the dart came from. So you pick the dart here, then you have this like so. So on that dress we have darts in two places, one here, one here. That was why we went through the process of dart manipulation, because we need to move the waist dart and distribute it for both sides of the pattern. So as far as this tutorial is concerned, we are done with the drafting of the upper part. The second stage is to take this and join it together with the lower part in order to achieve the 8 pieces. And there is no difference in the process. The process is the same thing as what we did on the back panel. There is no difference. So this part that has armhole area on the back panel is the same thing as this, while the part that has the zipper allowance is the same thing as this piece for the front panel. So you can see this is very straightforward. So you will just go through the process in joining the skirt together with this piece. Same process with the back panel. So guys, now I have the upper part joined together with the lower part, which means I've extended the upper part downward to the dress length. So I have two pieces for the front panel. This is one piece, this is the piece that falls on the center front, while this is the side, and this is going to be in 2 places and this also in 2 places, which makes it 4 inches. And this very one is together with this piece. And as I explained earlier, that you can either cut it like so, or better still, remove this completely and cut it differently on your fabrics. You can see I've cut this now. I will put it aside. So this also will be cut in 2 places, this will be cut in 2 places, and of course this does not get to the hem line, so this will be joined together at this point. So this will be joined together at this point, as a dart from the mid neckline, and it stops somewhere around the apex, which is a dart that comes from the mid neck on the reference image. If you look at the picture closely, you will notice the dart does not go downward, it stops somewhere below the chest level. So that is the place of this dart. So this piece will be put aside like so. Then this is the piece I used for the lower part of the dress, downward to the dress length, and this also to the dress length. The method I used in extending this downward to the dress length is the same method I used for the back panel. There is no difference. Then on the dart side of this piece, this is the dart side. On this dart side, I added half of an inch of seam allowance downward. So when you are ready to cut this on fabrics, this is going to be the positioning, and this part is the dart side. So on this side as well, you will need to add extra half of an inch as seam allowance downward to this point. So that is when you are cutting out your fabrics, because this is going together like so. Okay, so you will need half of an inch here on this side and half of an inch on this side as well, because after joining this together with this piece is coming to join together with this on this part. So this is the dart side for this piece. This is a dart area. So this particular piece has a dart piece in two places, one dart here and another dart here. So when you place this on your fabrics will be on fold. Then you will add half of an inch here and half of an inch here before cutting out your fabric. So after cutting this out on your fabrics, you will have it in two places, that is two pieces. When you cut this out as well, you will have two pieces. When you cut this out as well, you will have two pieces. Then at the center front, in this case, this is not going to be on fold. Your center front is not going to be on fold. This is going to be in pieces and not as a single piece. So you need to add extra seam allowance of half of an inch at the center front, which will be used in joining the center front together, just like our reference image. If you look at the picture closely, you will notice there is a joining at the center front, unlike your normal dress where the center front has no joining. In this case, because this is an 8 pieces dress, we have to have this piece in 8 places. So your center front is going to be with joining. When you have this in 2 places, it will be in 2 different places, not joined together. You are the one that will have the seam allowance, then join it together with your seam allowance, which will help you to attach this downward to the hemline. So those are the things you need to do on the front panels. And don't forget, this dart side also needed seam allowance of half of an inch, which I've added on my pattern, and I extended this downward to the dress length. Then for this particular piece, if you know you can get confused, just place your green line. Your green line will tell you the direction of your pattern when you want to cut out your fabrics. So when you have your green line like so, put your arrow, so which means this is going to be your upper part and this is the lower part. When placing your pattern, you will have to place it like this. And also the neckline you have, part of the neckline you have on this will also guide you. You can see this is the part of the neckline, and you have the whole shoulder line on this. This is the shoulder line. You can also label it as the shoulder line, because if you don't pay a closer attention to all this, you can get confused after cutting out your fabric. So this is coming together with this. This has part of the neckline, and this piece also has part of the neckline. So this is going to be a guide for you. Join this together, and this is coming to meet this on the armhole area. So now I will be cutting out the front panel, but before cutting out the front panel, I will separate my pattern from the new pattern paper. So which means you must transfer your lines on the new pattern paper. So this will help you to know exact points where where the chest level, the bust level, and other level falls on your pattern. And after cutting out your fabrics, you must place notches on each point. You place notches on each point on the both pieces. When you are joining together, the notch point must meet properly. So this will help you not to have a shortage or more when joining the pieces together. Here are the two pieces I cut out for the front panel, and the part I removed from this side is just an extra. This is the piece which we have to cut out on the fabric separately. Then add your allowance. Don't forget your same allowance here, the dart side here, and the dart side here. So this part will be attached to the center piece. This is the center piece. So this part will be attached together with the center piece, while this part will be attached to the side piece, so which is the part that has the armhole like this. So, and this armhole is going to be the completion of this. It's going to complete this part. So after joining this together, then the side piece and the center piece will go together on the dart side this way. Then this is how you stitch downward. Then as for the collar, it is a straight neck band of about 2 inches height, while the length of the band will be equal to the neck circumference of your client. Then you tape the edges of the band with a bias binding. So the bias binding must be a contrasting color that will bring out the beauty of the collar. So that is for the neckband. And for the sleeve, this is just a basic sleeve with a gathers on the shoulder line. On the sleeve head, you will need to have more than the real measurement. Let's assume your sleeve head supposed to be 18 inches, and because we are going to gather the edges, it has to be more than 18 inches. You can make this 6 inches or 8 inches more. Then you pleat the center of the sleeve head in order to achieve that fullness. Okay, now to the side of the dress, which is the part that falls on the armhole, the part that a contrasting color of fabrics was used in order to beautify the dress. You will need to cut out a piece of fabric with a contrasting color as well. Then you will look at the shape closely, then cut out the fabrics using that shape, the exact shape you have on the image. You look at it closely and cut out the shape. After cutting, then you will bind the edges, pipe the edges with a bias binding, place it on the side piece of your front panel. And don't forget, it has to get to the armhole. So the measurement you will use for this is it has to start from the armhole downward to the hemline. So after joining all the pieces together, then you are going to achieve your desired results. So that will be all on how to draft an 8 pieces dress pattern without joining on the waistline with that manipulation.